Hello there, everyone. It's Kristi, and welcome to the December sort of holiday festive season patron hangout with me and my patrons, people who are generous enough to support my channel and really cool people that I consider friends. So welcome to each of you and season's greetings. Let's go through and yeah, just say how you guys are doing today, just so we all have a chance to kind of get a bit of an update. I just have to say there was snow in Germany, but then it melted because we don't really have snow very much here. But the Christmas markets are open and they're lovely. I did a little Facebook Live for the first time from the Christmas market, which was great. But the best thing about it is there's one not too far away from where I work. Well, they're all over the town. So this is a great thing. So you can go to the Christmas market for lunch, not for Glühwein, because then you're less productive in the afternoon. But they have all kinds of, fresh brats and sauerkraut and smoked salmon, beef steaks. It's just, you can get all kinds of German dishes as well. So I normally despise the winter because it's cold and I don't like being cold, but having German Christmas markets really takes the edge off. So yeah, Chris, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fairly well. I managed a few hours of sleep before doing it this time.
Excellent.
Are my levels okay? I can't tell.
Yeah, you sound good to me.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Leto, how about you? You're next to my moving across the screen.
Good and bad. I'm feeling kind of crappy, but I'm in a super good mood, so
Keep the super good mood going.
It's okay. It's been raining for 3 days, so without rain, it's kind of shitty, but it's not going away. So
we'll try to keep your super good mood up here in the chat.
Yeah, but it's pretty hard to lower my good mood. I'm a good mood person. I'm filled with them, full of antidepressants, so I can thank them. Yay! I'm in pain. I don't give a shit. Yay, antidepressants.
At least that's one thing you can cheer for.
Yeah.
And live on location, we have Matthew. I'll put you up on a lock again. So.
Yes. Live from a highly disclosed location. One more day. You've seen this before, the same theater on Steve's channel. So I am here with my consoles, my laptop, and a set down there. I can't really see my own image, so I have no idea what I'm showing you.
No, we can see it.
One more day until the show's over, and then I go off to something else. But, yep, back in the theater. So I got to bug out in about 15 minutes, but I'm here for right now.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to have you always. And cool view. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm not next, am I?
You are.
All right. I'm on a new medication, and it slows me up a lot.
Right.
For right now, anyway. I have two things, both Wisconsin things. One, Aaron Rodgers is playing right now. He's back finally after being out for a bunch of weeks.
That's good.
And two, the city of Milwaukee is experimenting with using cheese brine mixed with road salt to melt the ice on the roads.
Sir, you're gonna.
It's a New York Times article, only in Wisconsin, and the two cheeses that they use the brine from, or the preferred to use the brine from, are provolone and mozzarella. Only in Wisconsin.
And so they also use this. So do you understand at all how the process works? Is it sort of like a liquid that, because it's salty, has a lower freezing rate and therefore melts away? Or is it turned into some sort of...
My understanding is that they just use the brine and mix it with road salt. And the road salt apparently washes off fairly quickly, but the brine, which is very salty too, helps make it stick longer and make the road smell like pizza.
I will say that if the brine itself is stickier and therefore erodes more quickly, and it allows for a reduction in the amount of times salt is required to make a road safe, that ultimately, as long as the brine isn't in any way toxic than in the equivalent amount of salt that would have been used, that's actually a really big deal for freshwater bodies of water in Wisconsin, because a lot of that road salt, of course, goes into ditches and then might flow into rivers and salinates the fresh water.
Yeah.
I was going to say that it becomes a much better version of street pizza.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Chris, you broke up there. We didn't hear you.
Matthew's back.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Still having some problems. You might want to try hitting F5 and reloading it. So hi, M. Abernathy. I think you're maybe having some background noise, so I'm going to mute you. Yeah, you are the problem. It's okay. When we get to you, we'll try again. Yes, so I would imagine that it would make the city smell, it made people really hungry all the time if it smells like pizza.
Yeah. Only in Wisconsin.
Oh, hey. Jonathan's back just in time to be say how he's doing.
What? Does it be someone that you're used to? How's my internet?
Much better.
Okay.
We were just like hearing how people were doing, and Tom just updated us on the use of cheese brine to reduce snow from the icy roads of Wisconsin. And I don't know if you can top that, but yeah, how are things in your life? And do you know of anything as interesting as cheese flavored or cheese brine smelling streets?
Well, let's see. Earlier this week, I saw on Thursday, I saw The Last Jedi, and I liked it. I really liked it. It's kind of interesting. My brothers are like, it's pretty good. It's really good, but not great. But others have been saying that it is great, and so I'm kind of like, I really liked it, and so I recommend people to go see it and stuff like that. And other than that, like last night, I did a hangout with our good friend, the Lonely Wolf 1980 Troy, where we talked about Japanese culture and Japanese things and stuff like that. And Troy decided to let's watch some weird Japanese commercials. My God, those Japanese commercials are weird, but they did an effect though, because now I want to eat some choco balls or have some curry or stuff like that. Or I wonder what Tommy Lee Jones was like selling, because he seemed to have superpowers in those commercials.
So on the Star Wars thing, I'm curious to know, I haven't seen it yet, but when I saw Wonder Woman, I thought Wonder Woman for its genre was a really good movie. Now, in terms of great movies, it wasn't a great movie. It would have been a good movie, but it's kind of like, in terms of action, and especially for DC, that was a great movie. Is that kind of how you feel about Star Wars? Like, it's great for genre, but it's not a great film?
It's not, actually, I think that there's maybe some greatness to it that people outside the genre will enjoy, stuff like that. But one thing is that the movie did really well is that it was a movie with characters. Each character had their own story arc throughout the movie, and most of those story arcs were concluded towards the end of the movie and stuff like that. And each of the characters like needed different things out of the plot, or needed different things to resolve in the movie, and did their own things as well. And so I felt as well, it was still a sci-fi action adventure film and stuff like that. Some of the action set pieces at the end, it was like, oh wow, that take my breath away. I was like, that is awesome. But it also had some really good character moments as well. I mean, like Kylo Ren is, just like in Force Awakens, is still a fascinating character as a villain character. He is an antagonist. You're thinking it's like, could he be on the dark side of that? Because he is truly just a conflicted character and stuff like that. You see the internal struggles that he is trying trying to live up into big shoes to fill that he just can't fill and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting and stuff like that. Oh, and the humor. I actually like the humor in this movie. It's not, I won't say it's a comedy, definitely not, but they use the humor correctly in certain places to like deflate the tension in the scene and stuff like that. Or like this is at the very beginning, so I'm not spoiling it, or just to troll the space Nazis of the First Order. That was awesome.
Yeah, I learned the term for that is bathos. It's when most commonly it's used like in or at least not commonly, but it's easily illustrated by a serious moment in a Marvel movie that then, there's a bit of comedy afterwards to lighten it rather than to keep it going. And so, yeah, that's the cinema critics term for that change of emotion is bathos.
Yeah, but Troy and I are going to have a hangout this Saturday, probably, and we're going to just go all spoilerific on that hangout and just talk a lot about it. Because by this Saturday, most people that want to see it or probably have seen it by then and stuff like that. And I definitely recommend it for anyone who's interested in seeing it, who for some reason has not yet seen it because of obligations and stuff like that. Definitely, I say go see it. I mean, Troy puts it as like his third best Star Wars films in his own list that he tweeted out on Twitter and stuff like that. And I had to really reconsider where it is on my list and stuff like that. But I really enjoyed the film, so I will leave it at that. And now, Em, you can put your earbuds back in. Hold on, I'll tap in the chat.
Not all of us have seen it yet. As people who know me know that I'm going to watch it during my annual New Year's trek down to the Air and Space Museum.
Ah.
Oh, that's cool.
There you go.
In full IMAX of the Udvar Hazy Center.
Oh, wow, IMAX theater. Those theaters are always great.
Yeah, so then I guess next in line, we'll come back to M at the end, if you don't mind, because we've got, is that you, Tim?
Yeah.
Hiding under Trump's wife's secret lover?
Sorry, I thought I changed it. I changed it to Melania. I thought it was better. But
Right.
I tried to put a banner on like Jonathan has. But I think it only works when you have a video on, probably. You get it's like an overlay. You put like a little red banner across. Okay, I'll turn my video on then. Anyway, so yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm here the whole time this time. Thank God.
Hey!
But, all right. So happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Merry Kwanzaa. I think that's all of them. Just
Cool. Thank you.
the year's ending pretty well in a lot of ways for if you're on the left in America anyways, because things have been looking up recently. Maybe we can get to that later.
Oh, you're done?
Oh yeah, I'm just taking a drink.
Okay.
So
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, so M, you're on mute because I heard your background noise, but yeah, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. This is my first ever Google Hangout.
First ever, and not just my Patron hangout, but your first ever hangout?
Ever.
Well, we'll be very gentle with you.
Welcome.
We are popping your cherry.
Yes, we are, but we're very loving about it.
Yes. Oh yeah, I can say from experience because my first ever Google Hangout was with Kristi Winters and Kevin Logan and Michael Rowlands and a few others, and yes, they were very gentle as they popped my cherry.
We're very experienced.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 50, so I'm pretty experienced.
Oh, your sound went then at the end. Could you say that again?
I said I'm 50, so I think this is the last cherry I'll ever have popped.
Well,
You never know. There's a first time for everything.
Tom disagrees.
The internet is a long place. Who knows where it's going to go in the next 20 years? But yeah, so welcome. And I have to say, the first time I did a hangout was actually at Steve Shive's hangout. And I was so nervous. I was just absolutely, heart was racing. And I was so self-conscious because I was on the camera at the time, even though I was in the corner and nobody was paying attention to me. And then when I started running hangouts, I had the same kind of nerves. And at this point, I'm like, oh shoot, I've got 2 minutes. I've got to open up the hangout and send the links. Crap. Oh dang, I got to plug in my mic before I open the hangout. And so I'm totally chill about it now. But welcome. Yeah, and how are things your way for your the month of your December?
Well,
it's the month of your December. Does that make sense? I think you heard what I meant, not what I said.
It's funny because the journey here to this chat has been an odd one. I'm trans, and I I was living in America. Well, I'm an American, but I moved in June of 2016 to the UK, and I feel like I made it out because I don't have to live under Trump. But
yeah, I mean, you are living under Brexit, but yeah, you are not living under Trump, and that's actually like getting out of the food chain. You know, that's
well,
like
especially being trans.
yes.
It's very nice to live in a country where, although we are having some problems with TERFs right now, but I see some of my friends that are in the U.S. that are struggling right now because of all the stuff that Trump's putting in place. It's just
like censorship, like censoring the word transgender.
Well, literally, there's just something that came out today where they're talking about reversing hate crime laws in municipalities, and it's just like,
yeah, the party of local government is about stopping people from raising minimum wages or hate crime laws on a local level.
But on a separate note, I did want to note what brought me here because I only support one other person on Patreon. I'm pretty new to Patreon as well, but I saw the video you did on Skepticon, the recent one, the part 1.
Oh, that was Kristi. I mirrored it because she had asked us people in the community to mirror it. So I have to. You might be giving money to the wrong person.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But I that's kind of how I found your work, and kind of you do have a YouTube channel, right?
Oh, yeah. Here we are. Yes. Yeah. And I make content. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that Kristi got all the credit. She should get H Bomber and Sean level views on that video, I think. But sorry, please continue.
Well, no, the video was awesome, but as I am so kind of tired of, like, I've been trying to get involved with the atheist community online, and I get more of the bro culture, the bro atheists, and so seeing your channel and the work that you do has been a breath of fresh air.
Oh, that makes me feel so good. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for your contribution and for coming here and saying that too, and joining us with our little family of friends here. So other people might want to comment on that, but
yeah.
That's
fantastic.
fantastic.
To interrupt, but I'm going to get going here because we're about to open house, so catch you all later.
Hey, break a leg.
Yeah, break a leg.
Well, that's a wonderful, heartwarming story for me, at least. So thank you so much.
I'm so happy to have someone else who lives in Europe.
Yes, we're starting to get real equitable balance of Americans to non-Americans, I think.
Well, Marianne also is from Germany, but she's not in this hangout.
Yeah, she's not here yet.
Yeah, she's not here. Neither is David, who was on one hangout, who's from the UK. Neither is Xander, who's like, it's been a while since like Idle Magpie has been on this hangouts.
Yeah, we miss you, Xander. Come back.
Yes, please.
And you're also Tones. Xander, I promise I will shit on Stephen Moffat during the hangout. So I'll make sure to do it every single time you're in the hangout.
No, everyone should be shitting on Stephen Moffat.
Right. So yeah, guys, I don't know if there were any conversations that you want to carry over from Steve's channel, or we could talk about net neutrality. I've been watching some YouTube drama this afternoon. We can talk about Trump. What do you guys I haven't prepared. Oh no, before we go, should we do the Resistance Fund?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not that ready for us, yes.
Yes, let's do that first. So if everyone could mute themselves. There was another channel that I follow, and that person has made a nominee for Project Awesome, but it seemed like something that would be right up right in line for the kind of thing that the Resistance Fund is meant to do, not just political resistance, but making positive change in the world. So let me just share my screen here while I talk and multitask at the same time. So here is the video I wanted to promote. I'll put a link to this in the description box below because I was really crap beforehand and didn't do it while I was setting up the Hangout. This is Rational Disconnect's 3-minute video, and you can go like that to share it on Twitter or around Facebook. But this is the group that I would nominate for the December Resistance Fund.
Happy P4A, everybody. If you'll indulge me for just a few seconds, I want to give my subscribers up to speed on what exactly this video is. So all the way back in the long, long ago of YouTube, the brothers John and Hank Green, also known as the Vlog Brothers, came up with a scheme to hijack the front page of YouTube.
The project is to take over YouTube. We're taking over YouTube by having this image be the thumbnail for hundreds of videos.
They did this by having all of their fans, also known as nerd fighters, make videos for charities that they were passionate about. They also encouraged these nerd fighters to watch, like, comment, and share each other's videos. Doing this drew much more attention to those videos. And because of this, they managed to get the entire front page of YouTube covered with videos for charity.
Good morning, Hank. It's Tuesday, December 18th, and this is what the most discussed page of YouTube looks like. Nerd fighter, 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 nerd fighter. Mike Huckabee.
Things have changed a little bit since then. YouTube is actually working with them now. But one thing that hasn't changed is that members of the Nerd Fighter community still make videos during the Project for Awesome to promote charities that they're passionate about. And you might not have known this, but I happen to be a nerd fighter. Some people might even think that I'm too much of a nerd fighter, but to that I say, could you really have too much of John Green's mustachioed, pizza-loving face in your life? I think not. Yeah, I never noticed that I had this much stuff. I might have a problem. So the charity that I picked is She's the First, because this charity calls towards my caring, compassionate side and my cold, analytical, data-driven side. It's the best of both worlds. She's the First is a charity that works with partners in 11 countries throughout Africa, Latin America, and South Asia to promote the education of girls and young women. They do this through scholarships, mentorships, health and wellness programs, and boarding. Now, there's a very good reason why they focus on girls and young women, and that's because in developing countries, they face a lot more challenges. And by donating to this charity, you're not only directly helping these young women by giving them the tools to better their lives, you're also helping the communities in that area. And that's because empowering women, specifically through education, is one of the best things that you can do for a developing country. When women have an education and career opportunity, the economy increases as they move into the workforce. They also tend to get married later in life and put off having children, which means they have fewer children and they also have healthier children. They can also be community leaders, not only by helping their families directly, but also participating in the community. So this has a much wider impact than just one person. Thank you for watching this video, and please consider donating to She's the First. If you don't have the funds, that's totally fine. There's still a couple of things that you can do. Go ahead and like this video and comment on it. That'll make it more likely to come up in search results. Also, you can obviously share this video with as many people as possible. And of course, don't just do that for this video. I'm also going to leave links in the description that'll take you to the P4A page, where you can see a playlist of tons of other videos that creators have made to support the charities that they're passionate about. That said, have a great P4A and DFTBA. Oh, all my subscribers are going to think I'm a weirdo now.
Okay. Oop. So, yes, I think that's enough. Stop sharing.
Rational disconnect. If your subs don't already think you're a weirdo, they'll soon learn. You gotta embrace that. After all, you might have a midlife crisis in that video. As my God, I have so much stuff. I can definitely relate to that. My God, I have so many hats and stuff like that. But hey, sometimes the hat complements the outfit. Like this actually started out with first the shirt. The shirt and leggings combo, because I actually like the long sleeve shirts because they're good for winter, long sleeve shirts and stuff like that. So I started with the shirts, the shirt and the leggings because I always wear leggings. I also got a pair of socks to go with it. So from head to toe, Captain America. You just have to trust me on the underwear. That is not matching, unfortunately.
You're
but
a fashion victim.
But then the hat and goggles combo I got from the same hat maker as the R2D2 Bullard and stuff like that. Or hat the hat. And then I had to like get the shield in order to complete the costume. So yes, I'm cosplaying today for just no reason. That's the kind of person I am. I have to seriously have worn this to work.
You would love Carnival in Cologne. You'd
I
have
think
a
I would,
closet full.
yes.
You would change 3 times a day.
I seriously changed costumes at like an anime con. I wore like 3 different costumes. I wore my Sailor Moon get up. I wore my R2D2 stuff, and then I wore my Captain American stuff.
There you go. Right. So, is everyone okay with this month's contribution? It's dropped below 100, so it'll be like 18. So I would just round it up with my personal funds to a $20 donation from the Resistance Fund.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It sounds awesome.
I mean, I love Rational Disconnect, and the project for Awesome is really cool and stuff like that. So, yeah, and that charity she's first seems like definitely a worthy charity, and definitely kind of charity that we would like that we would donate to and we would give our money to. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. Well, it seems like in terms of the Resistance Fund coming out of the Women's March, girls' education is obviously well within that remit. So. And me being a woman and an educator and knowing and also valuing, especially making up the gaps, makes such an improvement in the quality of life for everyone when girls have that opportunity too. So, all right, thanks you guys. I'll make that payment and then show you the receipt in January.
Thank you.
So, yeah. All right, so open floor. What topics? I'm not going to lead things now. I'm going to chill because I want to relax. You guys want to talk about net neutrality? Have a good moan about that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think Jonathan is about on point. Yeah.
I almost want to throw my hat. I was like, oh my god, they reached. Oh man.
I would say at this point, it's a great time for everyone to contact a member of Congress. Doesn't matter what party affiliation they are. Net neutrality has not been getting the kind of coverage, at least from what I can see in the news, that I think it deserves. It is mentioned, but there's so much going on with Trump that it tends to get buried. And this is really huge. I mean, privatizing basically the internet and turning it into packages like you do with your mobile phone, your O2 package or your Verizon package. I don't know what else do you have in the United States? AT&T, right? It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for the internet. It's not going to be good for innovation. It's not going to be good for startups and small businesses. It is going to be good for corporations charging you more to access other people's content and trying to get you to watch their content alone.
Yeah. I've seen that there are a lot of attorney general. Is that the proper term?
What was that again?
Yes.
Attorney general. They are suing. There are a lot of attorney general who are suing the FCC.
State Attorney General.
State Attorney General. Yeah, the one for the state of New York is the first, and there's a list of I think 15 states who are suing the FCC for net neutrality. So that's a good news.
So
it's good thing I have bourbon with me so I can get drunk on this.
So here's a bit of English awkward grammar. Right, so if you've got one person who's attorney general, you have an attorney general. But if you have 2 of them, it's attorneys general. The plural goes on the attorney. So you don't have 2 attorney generals because they're not in the military.
Okay.
Just so you know, because this is like a weird thing about English grammar. So yes, Tom was right that there were state attorneys general, which sounds really awkward when you say it in English.
No, in French we have weird stuff like that, so I can relate.
Okay, yes. Right, but do we know, I mean, I know New York was doing it, maybe Hawaii, but are they predominantly Democratic states, or is it a mix of Republican?
I saw a list of them, and like Mississippi's on it, and there's some other states as well.
There's Maine, I know because Steve was very pleased.
Maryland is on there as well.
Yeah.
I know California's one too, so that's significant because that's the biggest population of people
Right.
in the U.S. of course, and
Makes sense that California would also be that kind of list too. That's a heavy blue
California
state
is
as well.
on there too, obviously.
Silicon Valley,
Mhm.
I don't think is very happy about this.
No.
No.
I like
No,
how
yeah,
people
this is
understand this issue. I've seen a lot of ignorant comments on places I've gone to talk about it. Like, they don't understand how big of a deal it is. They're like, oh, it's more options. I guess people are probably
No, it's not.
the libertarian persuasion probably, but most people are not known for their sense or they don't really understand reality in it. That's the mission a lot of the time. If you watch the Majority Report, they call in constantly. They always get their ass handed to them by
Can we
simply.
kill libertarians, please?
No, we have to reason with them.
They give such a bad name to anarchists.
I think that there's the big thing that's not really being talked about in this issue is what principle is at work here when it comes to something like the internet, and what does it mean to have a public good? Because I don't think there's much of a value for the public good in the United States. Like now, M is in the UK. People value the BBC. People complain about their TV licenses, but in terms of things that are British and associated positively, I think more Brits would say that the BBC better represents Britain than the Queen does. She's quite divisive, right? But they have an investment in that public good, and they have, 6 radio stations and 3 TV channels, all funded through TV licenses to provide not just what's popular, but what is beneficial as well. It has a remit not only to provide the service, but because it's a public good, to provide a public good in the form of education and information and accuracy.
Yeah, the educative programs are pretty amazing. I love the Attenborough's documentaries. I could watch that every day.
Yeah, I mean, the BBC nature documentaries set a gold standard. They are the gold standard for nature documentaries.
They're amazing.
But you're not going to get that kind of investment if you're not going to get, the Shark Week numbers on Discovery. So what does it mean to have a public good and and this is the other thing too, taking federal lands and just selling them off. Those resources, if nothing else, all the profits made from those resources should go into the government's coffers. Because it should be the people whose land it is that benefit, not some private organization that gets to come in and gets handed land and then gets to take all the money out of it and piss off. And what the hell is that? I don't get that.
That's,
your country is really turning to shit, to be honest. It's really worrying for the rest of the world too.
Yeah.
Did anybody hear what the Trump administration did? I believe it was on Friday with the CDC. Saying they can't use several words like transgender and diversity, and it's some other ones I can't remember right now. But it's just they can't say it's science-based research anymore as well.
This is actual censorship.
Tom, you were going to say something.
I was going to go for a Carlin reference with the the seven words you can't say on the radio, and it's kind of that. I think it's 5 words. Evidence-based, science-based.
Diversity, transgender, and fetus.
Yeah.
Why fetus? I don't understand. Like that's the one.
Because they want to take a baby.
They want to force people to say baby.
Yeah, because people would have like a different image of like a fetus as opposed to a baby and stuff like that.
Who would want to be medically accurate? Why would the CDC want to be medically accurate in terms of the development of the baby across, zygote, embryo, fetus to delivered infant? Yeah, why would we want to be medically accurate?
Because we don't like what the medical sciences tell us and stuff like that. So
Let's say human larva. I'm sure they would love it.
What do you think about this? Is actual censorship. So I wonder if this has only been Friday, but has the free speech warriors, the rationales say anything about
they
this?
don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, that's true.
I think someone had screen capped Sargon's videos in the last week, and he hasn't done a video on net neutrality yet. So I think I'm trying to think if I've seen anyone else. I mean, I don't really troll their channels every single day to see what they're doing. I usually go by what people retweet on Twitter when they're mocking them.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. Go ahead, Tom.
I saw somebody put on Facebook a tweet or a comment from Ian
Miles Chung.
Uncle Chong, yeah.
About that, and he said the only one that he thought was a little wonky was Fetus, but the other ones were fine because they were only political propaganda. And I'm thinking science-based, evidence-based, that's propaganda. There's something wrong with this boy.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with Ian Miles Chung.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things wrong with that guy.
I just
need
had
to
a
be more
flash
drunk.
to the movie Raising Arizona. Son, you got a penny on your head.
I flashed to Hank Hill talking about there's something wrong with that boy.
Yeah.
This boy ain't right.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
This boy ain't right.
About Chong, apparently he's trying to bring back Gamergate too now. He's behind this whole because that term is the hashtag is it's trending on Twitter again. After all these years. And
Yeah.
apparently he's behind it. Is what I've been seeing because he needs it for to feed his ego probably because he got a lot of mileage off of that back in like 2012, 2014. So.
Yeah. I noticed in my Twitter thread, it wasn't the hashtag trending itself in my Twitter feed, just by a lot of people that have been talking about Gamergate or something like that. Because I started the reason why I got more active on Twitter is after I found out my younger brother is a Gamergater and stuff like that. He hasn't been much active. Hasn't been commenting on this sort of thing in his Twitter feed that I noticed and stuff like that. So I guess thank God, but who knows what he secretly thinks about it? And he still watched Sargon videos, so there's that. I bet. But yeah, it's just been seeing a lot of like comments on the Gamergate and it's like, and I know some people kind of like. Don't like it being Gamergate being called a hate group and stuff like that because they personally have friends that are cool or rational and you can have conversation with and they were coming at it purely at the angle of like consumer advocacy for gamers and stuff like that or for video game enthusiasts and stuff like that. But no, unfortunately, in my mind, Gamergate is a hate group or a hate movement. There's certainly like a large percentage of guys or people in that group in the Gamergate kind of culture or community and stuff like that are probably just pissed off about like FCC's of video game journalism or other video game industry shenanigery. But most of them are like Angry Jack, as Inio Studios mentioned in his great video series, Why Are You So Angry, and stuff like that. But I think it was always, in my opinion, it was always a hate group. It was always like a hate movement. It wasn't co-opted or overshadowed. That was
just a bunch of guys who are unhappy that women get to play with their toys. It's not more complicated than that. I stopped calling myself a gamer when this shenanigans happened. Honestly, that culture, I love video games. It's one of my first hobbies, but that culture is shit. Really, it's so toxic. It's really. I enjoy video game to no end, but I'm not a gamer.
I mean, yeah, the Melrose Project did a 9-part. Yeah. Melrose Project did a 9-part series of how video games remain male dominated and stuff like that. That's a great video series as well.
Chris, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, my daughter is convinced that there's no sexism in video games. But she also thinks feminism and SJWing is cringy, so we're trying to have a conversation about that.
If she has the peace of mind to think like that. I actually envy people who think sexism and racism doesn't exist.
They have blissful ignorance.
I remember the time when I wasn't a feminist. I enjoyed much more, a lot of things.
Simpler.
I mean, think about it now.
We are the true red pillars, actually. We took the red pill.
Before Jonathan gets in again, I want to say I think it would be interesting to know what female characters in video games that she plays does she identify with, or does she tend to identify with the male characters? And ask her why, because I think women who play games might basically you know, when you're raised as a girl, you see naked women all the time. When you grow up, you're confronted with lingerie, when your mom takes you and catalogs, and then advertising, and then movies, and you're given an image of women's bodies. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't. You know, you don't have to ask her this question, but I would just be curious as to actually, does she ever, on a journey, identify with with many female characters in these games, or is she basically identifying with the male character through his value system and his ideas? So sorry for the long question.
That's okay. She's getting a lot of the ideas, I know, from several people that are not exactly the people I'd rather she hang out with online. But
sure.
She does a lot of Overwatch, and her avatar, at least, is this little redhead. Although she's a taller than me redhead. So, so I'm the first. It's a topic for another time, but I do want to get into it at some point.
Sure.
With you.
I think there's a lot of streamers like that, like that they're not critical of like feminism, or they just think it's a bunch of BS and stuff like that. I actually have an acquaintance that I've met her through playing Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. And she definitely has strong opinions about like feminism. She thinks it's not needed and stuff like that. And I think there's that element to it, because they personally don't need feminism. They don't see the point of feminism.
No, that's the thing where we are girls gamers or role players. We want to be one of the boys because it's the only way you're getting accepted. Honestly, if you don't accept to be treated like less, you're getting shit. It's my experience as someone who plays a lot of MMO, of online gaming. I have one friend that I have kept for a long time, but apart from him, I can't. I always have trouble with the communities because I don't accept sexism. I don't accept racist jokes and that kind of thing. If someone says something sexist or racist, I'm going to tell them that I don't want them to talk like that, at least when I'm here. I mean, I stay polite now that I'm older. I can be calmer. When I was younger, I straight and insulted them. But now I try to have a conversation, but they don't listen. They want to be able to treat women like shit. And the ones who deny it are just hypocrites, because that's how it is. And either you accept it, or you become one of the boys and you denigrate women too, and you shit on feminism, and then you accept it.
Yeah, the game
it's complicated to be a woman in those circles, honestly. I think you really understand how to be yourself and not take shit from them when you get older. It's not ageism. It's just you older, wiser, you know?
Experience.
And you're out of shit too. The more you get old, the less you give shit.
Chris, we didn't hear you were trying to say something, but it was cutting out.
F5.
Yeah, you sound like a backwards record going zip, 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 zip. Can you F5?
I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to go eat. Actually, I'm going to leave you, so it's going to leave a little. Between Jonathan and me, no one can talk.
That's true. I will now.
We are in French. We have a word for that. It's pipelette.
Pipelette?
Yeah, it means someone who talks a lot. So Jonathan and I are pipelettes. So just one, you will be good. So hugs to everyone. I love you all.
I'll give you an internet hug.
Bye.
Good supper.
Yeah, so Chris, your point.
She also doesn't think PewDiePie did anything wrong. So really kind of have some conversations here that are a little awkward, and identity fixing and all that. I don't know.
I actually know most gamers thought PewDiePie was wrong in that instance because I guess that they can tell when someone's being a racist. Most people can, anyways. But from what I saw, most people thought he was wrong. Just his fans were the ones that.
Yeah. I think H Bomber guy kind of covered that on his video about PewDiePie when Disney cut PewDiePie out. That was just based off the anti-Semitic joke, and it's a phenomenon he's noticing on YouTube because something gets a million likes and stuff like that. We kind of already willing to agree to that person because they have a million likes. So that when everyone says that, like, I think PewDiePie was wrong. The H Bomber guy mentions that, like, there was one streamer, a peer of PewDiePie, that says, I think PewDiePie was totally wrong, and that one guy got dogpiled for that comment and something like that.
Yeah.
I want to bring up something from the chat. This is related to the Gamergate sort of thing. It's very, Whistlers, it's very difficult finding spaces that discuss gaming that aren't full of people who are pre-introduce toxic tropes and something like that. I butchered one of those words there. I apologize. Yeah, that's another thing. Like Lito mentioned in her experience and stuff like that, and I had some of the experience. That's part of the reason why I don't play online gaming. I'm not as competitive as others, and so I kind of suck at it. But all of this I have like definitely heard some really racist and sexist things in just like online chat and stuff like that, and that's part of the problem. Mel's Projects mentioned in their video that like they do not play online games that much. Because of the toxic environment online and male-dominant environment online and stuff like that, and that's why a lot of women do not say their gender or don't chat at all in the voice chat and stuff like that. Just text, because once they know from personal experience, once they identify that they are a woman, then they'll automatically get othered. So it's part of like 4chan culture, which is where Gamergate kind of born out of. What good things come out of 4chan? Seriously, especially poll. There's nothing good that comes out of poll. They have like this slogan of tits or GTFO. If you are a woman, you got to prove it with pics or get the F out. You got to prove to us you're a woman. It's not good enough by your word. You got to show us you're a woman. And with pictures, chances are, especially on 4chan, especially on poll, you can just get objectified that way. Yeah, so it's because all around.
I think part of that is also because they can't see them any other way because they're all socially awkward, weirdos. That's part of what fuels this, because they can't, they don't have social skills to get a woman in any context at all. I've encountered that a lot, and there's actually a gaming community that I'm in, like on YouTube, where anyone says anything racist, we ban them from off the channel immediately, or sexist or whatever, just gone. And actually, the guy who runs the channel, he's African American, so it's even more. We have to get racism out of there, because there's a lot of people show up and say N-word, and we're just banned because he's doesn't want that, because it hurts his channel, because this is his job. Actually, he quit his job with a company to run this channel, and he has a daughter and a wife, so he's got to support them. So we just help him out and get rid of these people immediately, because it just ruins the algorithm, and so we don't tolerate it at all.
Yeah, and I think that, when women go into spaces that have traditionally been male-dominated, or were, with gaming, it's not like it's traditional because it's not that long, but the way that it was, marketed and to whom it was marketed, and the communities that built up around that, and just assumed what they were doing was normal, and everyone who joined their community should be like that. Or when it's a parliamentary building, when women start entering halls of government where they haven't been before, or businesses, they're running up not only against the fact that they're the only woman, but they're in that sort of locker room cultures that are slowly being removed, but still very much exist. And I'll let you speak just after this. But one thing I want to notice and maybe come back to is I've been watching the Kraut drama that's been happening around YouTube, and as a consequence, I've been watching a lot of live streams on channels that I don't normally watch, and it's a very much a locker room kind of feel to those hangouts, where there's swearing and very aggressive behavior, and people are challenged and insulted and expected to sort of take it and give it back. And I can't think of any hangout I've ever been on with my friends that was anything like the sort of norms I see in those hangouts. But yeah, I think Tim, you were going to say something.
Oh no, I think it was Chris.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you and I, Kristi, we're old enough. We're about roughly the same age. So you remember when girls and boys were aggressively marketed.
Playing Atari, yeah, come on. Space Invaders was awesome.
You know,
Pac-Man? Miss
How did
Pac-Man.
That's how I became a gamer. Seriously, no, my
Miss
mom
Pac-Man.
played. Yeah, my
Miss
mom.
Pac-Man was way better than Pac-Man.
Great. My mom started with Pong and stuff like that, and she like I was in her belly as she was putting quarters into Q*bert. For my oldest brother, it was Asteroid. For my younger brother, my other older brother is probably like Pac-Man, and for my youngest brother, maybe it was Gauntlet. That's the reason why we had the Nintendo Entertainment System, so that she can play Gauntlet without wasting quarters.
My advantage is
So,
kind of with the rise of Nintendo, basically. That's when the mid '80s is when I started to be around. That's when I started playing games. So I know Atari. I ran into it a few times, but I don't really have the memories. For me, it's like Nintendo, and from then on.
We used to play, what was it called? Crocodile? Pitfall.
Yes,
That
Pitfall.
was it. Pitfall. And I remember my cousin once got this amazingly high score for what we were as kids at the time, and we captured it by taking a Polaroid picture because that's how old I am.
That's how you had to frame your achievement. See,
that's how we roll.
Now you get a trophy for beating a game and stuff like that.
There's this bar we have in my city. I think you guys would like it. Basically, it's called Barcade. Basically, what it is, it's a bar filled with all arcade cabinets.
We have some bars like that too.
Yeah. So I went in there and I just destroyed the Mario Brothers score they had on there because like the original arcade game that they come from. Yeah. So yeah, that was fun.
Oh, Chris, you're dropping out again. I'm really sorry.
F5, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, but on that, I mean, I played, Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers, and Galaga was one of my favorite games.
Galaga is awesome.
Loved me some Galaga at the arcade. And so, yeah, initially, I mean, it wasn't what I did remember watching. Who did a video on this, which was absolutely brilliant? I think it was H-Bomber Guy on Dragon's Lair.
Yes, that video was awesome.
And I couldn't ever get past the first move. The game sucked. But I didn't realize how sexist and sexual the Prince Daphne character is drawn. But I mean, when I was a kid, that's how I was used to seeing women portrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, side note, in the past Hangout on Steve's Hangout, we kind of mentioned stuff like Back to the Future and the old James Bond movies and stuff like that. Well, there was some attempted rape in those movies and stuff like that. I guess it's a good thing we know better now.
Oh, James Bond hits women. Them. But I think Chris was trying to make a point.
Sure.
And then Tom.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I'm blaming all of sexism in video games on Princess Peach.
Tom, did you have something to add to that?
I don't remember. Well, no, two things. I guess two things. It's sort of a change, maybe in some ways. When I was younger, when I was the age you guys started playing video games, well, actually a little older, when I was in college, I got into pinball machines in bars, and mostly in the bars, but yeah. So I got into pinball machines, and I was pretty I guess in some ways addicted to at least one or two of the games.
Sure plays a mean pinball.
Yeah, I'm not deaf, dumb, and blind. That was probably my shortfall there. But the other thing was a little bit shifting. When a few weeks ago, I was feeling pretty depressed. My antidepressants were not doing the trick for a while, and that's what I'm saying when I said I just started a new one a couple weeks ago, and that's where I'm kind of feeling slow and fuzzy.
Right.
But during that time, I thought about it, and I let myself consider what it would be like, because I'm an old middle-class white guy in a rural conservative area, and when I was younger I was very conservative, and I thought what it would be like to go back to thinking like a conservative today. And for a few minutes, I let myself feel what that would be like. And it was scary because it was so damn comfortable. I could do that because I got all this, I got all this privilege, and, I have, I could be a Trumpista and just do very, very well for myself in terms of my inner feelings if I was not, moral. And if I didn't think about things, it would be so nice not to have to worry about people, about people that weren't like me. And then after about 4 or 5 minutes of that, I thought, I just had this panic attack, and I thought, holy shit, I can't do that. I couldn't live with myself. That would be horrible. So I came back and came out of it. And like I said, got new meds, and I'm doing okay. And I don't think about that anymore because that would be horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's so easy for people who are not in a position, men who don't have a lot of insight about women. Straight people who don't have a lot of sense about gay and transgender and such folks. It's so easy not to think about that and just go, oh, that's a little minority, and I don't care about them because I got my own problems, and I'm basically doing okay. So anyway, an aside, but that's what I was thinking when we were talking about the othering of so many different people.
Yeah.
I could do that and be basically fine if I weren't.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that one of the reasons why I have my YouTube channel is because, I've got a job that pays my bills. My student loans are massive, but that's my life. I'm not going to be taking a lot of world cruises in the next 10 years or 20 years or before I retire, but that's okay. I mean, I'm comfortable, I'm healthy, and I've been lucky enough to have access to a great education and borrowed quite a lot of money to get it. So I can be in a place where I don't have to worry about myself. I mean, I could focus on little minor things in my life, but in terms of the world's problems, especially with, I think, the constitutional crisis the United States is facing for any American citizen who isn't, outraged they're not paying attention. So, yeah, it is easier to just, shut off and turn off and focus on your own dramas or the things that you care about. Because in all honesty, it's a lot of work to take on other people's problems,
I mean, yeah, like, go ahead, you finish.
Okay, thanks. And so, sometimes people can do that more at better times than others. But I think if you are in a position to do that in your life, and then you continue to turn off or to continue to other people when presented with information, yeah, that's a moral failing on your part. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you could be a much better person.
Yeah.
I had that
and
conversation.
Tom is a much better person.
Yes, yes, Tom, you are a much better person now. I had this conversation with like a coworker, a friend on Friday night. We were at another coworker's birthday party at a bar, and then he said the T word rhymes with granny. That's sort of trans people, and I spend like an hour discussing with him. I would prefer you not to use that word because it means something to trans folks and stuff like that. And he was challenging me on that, and it wasn't a shouting match. It didn't go to blows, even though it was at the bar or something like that. But he was just defending his right because I didn't make a good enough case to convince him that it's in poor taste to use that word or something like that, or even like the R word ending in tard or something like that. And he also said, "Hey, listen, when I'm with my group of friends, it's just us group of friends. Everyone knows each other and stuff like that, and we know we don't mean ill intent with the word choice. We will say the N word and stuff like that." And it's like, dude, I judge you for using the N word, even if it is in a close private group where no one that could be affected by that word hears it and stuff like that. And plus with like the T word, you just don't know who is trans. So it should be in your best interest to consider or your word choices when out in public, something like, because you just don't know, and you just don't know if someone has an effect on you. But that person should know. It's like, wait a minute, that person should read your mind then? Hold on. And yeah, that was a discussion I had on Friday night and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm in a position where two people that I get along with had a fight on Twitter. And it was over, and that with the word retard and retarded, retarded does mean it has a meaning in terms of slowing. Like, something was retarded because of a block in the road. So I understand like the N word because there's really no other use for that. And also with the T word, as you point out. And as you say, it's kind of like the people who look over their shoulder before they tell a joke. If you're looking over your shoulder, what are you about to say that is offensive, right? And so anyway, that's an aside. Just to the people, I only use it with people I know. That kind of reminded me of that point of about looking over your shoulder. But here, and I've had this too with Joe from Acadian Times, who uses that word, and I understand from the person on Twitter, and Joe's point of view, they're not using it to be hurtful. They're not using it to be mean. They were. Just finish. It's like when growing up and the word gay was used as an insult, and I'm sure I used that as an insult because I didn't know any better.
I'm sure I used it too as well. Yeah. Because
I wasn't really fully cognizant of what homophobia was and how harmful it was, and I didn't have people in my life. I didn't have any gay relatives or family members until much later in my life. And so what I was trying to explain to Joe and also to this person is, if you agree that gay as an insult fell out of favor, and rightly so, but you're holding on to retarded as a slur, that word too is getting to be like gay. It's being washed away by history, and it's only being associated with a really negative connotation. Slowly, I agree. And some people use it freely. Oh my gosh, on the Warski scheme, he called something gay. I'm like, are we watching Bill and Ted's Great Adventure in the 1990s? I mean, can you update your lingo a little bit to the 21st century? Just get over it, drop it. Don't try to bring it back or make it cool like it's still cool. You sound like you're 8 years old in the 1990s. But so we're having these conversations about how these words are used, and I think it does help, to understand that people who use it, who aren't using it maliciously, they're just not really ready. They maybe just need to be talked to about seeing where it is in terms of a word like gay and why it needs to. They're fighting the tide of history, and do they really want to make the stand over the word retarded? Yeah. Not being taken as a slur, or do you just want to use a different word and not have this fight?
But so much of it is context. I mean, if you're trans, I'm trans, and I feel like I can use the T word, and I feel like there's a different context if somebody is African American and wants to say the N word to another Black person.
I do agree with that. Yeah.
That is a totally. I think it was Carlin had a piece on this where he talked about context and words, and so much of it has to do around. I kind of disagree with you a bit about people being not being quote bad people, because typically everyone is the hero of their own narrative. They don't.
That's true.
Very few people sit there and roll their mustache and go, ha 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 ha, I am going to do evil to this person.
I have the mustache for that, though. I should just shave it off and just have just the mustache. No, my brothers made that comment on my mustache. Anyway, you continue.
But there are very few people that actually think what they're doing is, quote, wrong. But so much of it has to do with privilege and with because if you acknowledge privilege, then you have one of two choices. You ignore it and you become part of the problem, or you have to do something about it. But if you ignore it, if you say it's not real or it's not happening, then you don't have to do anything about it. So there's some ownership, I think, in that as far as when people use certain words. The T word doesn't even bother me anymore when people use it. But that being said, I don't think that's because I've been called a snowflake in the last couple days.
Oh, yeah. That's why we're the winter
Return of the
snowflakes.
Buzzwords again too.
And I'm like, oh, that hurts so bad. I think I need some Salvadine cream for my burn.
Well, look, there's plenty of stuff like this outside my room right now, or outside my house. It's like I'll just go get some of those for you. But I know as a male that grew up in like the 1990s, and I'm sure John can probably relate to this too. I know for a fact that I called my friends or whatever, you know, the F word, not the F-U-C-K one, the one I'm in the gay context. No, the other one.
That one's okay.
Swear for gay
mag
people.
word or the mag word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you're a F-A-G-E-T. Or, you know, it's like the worst thing you could ever call somebody. It's like worse than calling their mother a whore. It was like that level of get people mad, because people would fight over if you question the sexuality, their heterosexuality, basically. And this is like going on when I was like, I don't know, 8 to like 20, and I realized like now I'm like, wow, homophobia was so rampant back then because everybody just did it without thinking about it. And I think some of those people that I went to school with, they actually turned out to be gay later on. So it's like, I imagine how much they must have really hated everybody for saying that to them, even though, you know, I'm sure they give it back to people too. But it's just, now it's like, I don't say it anymore because it's just, you know, it's hurtful, and I realize it's kind of sad everybody had to act like that back then. But I guess that's the journey human society's on. Now we're dealing with trans rights now. We're sort of like in that same vein. I kind of like basically where we are with trans rights in the West now is basically where we were with gay rights back in the 90s. It's transitioning to that now. That stage where we're getting past it slowly but surely. You know, we're trying to fight against the government. You know, like Reagan was with AIDS and with, you know, just all of that, and don't ask, don't tell, and etc.
But what's next? Burying dogs?
If it why does that matter on a public level, on a government level? If it doesn't affect me, then it shouldn't affect anyone else. And
I would honestly say polyamorous relationships would be the next stage.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, that because
those already exist, right? Some religions, anyways.
Well, insofar as legal recognition or more mainstreaming of it.
There are some problems with that, though. I've been in poly relationships. I'm not poly myself, but had a partner that was poly, and if you think about it, though, there are certain legal aspects, like how many people are you going to put on your insurance? How many people are you going to be able to? I mean, if you claim everyone in your family, you know, you claim 12 people as if you're married to 12 people, then you can claim them all as deductions on your taxes. you know, there are logistical legal things.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have an opinion on the subject, but just in terms of where sexuality and challenging it could go once we do achieve mainstreaming of trans people, and that part of our society is, you know, you get the 60%, 70% approval ratings as a hypothetical. But yeah, I agree. You're completely right. It would be really complicated, and things I hadn't really thought about because I haven't actually entertained the idea in terms of the legal problems, because I've never been in a poly relationship or talked about the legal problems before. So thanks for that interesting perspective. Please continue, by the way. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
No, that's all right. It's just, I think I'm not a libertarian at all. I'm probably a democratic socialist, but I'm kind of in the vein of kind of Noam Chomsky, I think. But I really do think that if it doesn't harm you, and it's between consenting adults, it shouldn't be anybody's business, whether it's what kind of relationship you have, or what kind of clothes you want to wear, or what you do to your own body. That's why we've had discussions in the trans community. I actually founded a blog, transadvocate.com, and we've had discussions about how trans rights is akin to like the same argument as abortion rights, in that it's my body, my choice, and I should have
autonomy.
the personal bodily autonomy to make decisions for myself. And I don't think it's rocket science. And you know, you get this moral outrage. People want it. I almost think like what you're talking about some of these debates online, like with Sargon and people like that, they get popular because it's outrage, and and outrage. It's this isn't anything new. It reminds me of when my grandfather took me down to a fire, because if it bleeds, it leads, and it's kind of an internet version of that. The people that are getting popular in the trans community, we have a person that if you like write her name anywhere, she will sue you, fake and perf, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But she's basically gotten famous on trolling, essentially, trans people, especially trans women, getting them pissed off, you know, making really outrageous statements to them to the point where they get pissed off, and then they say things that are bordering on violent and
retaliatory in nature.
And then uses that to say, well, trans women are violent, and then posting pictures of that and that kind of thing. But I think there's this churning of outrage at things like trans rights, or even with Milo, and over here we have Katie Hopkins, who does it against Muslim people. You know, and it's just, this stuff sells because there's a culture of where it seems like it's so uncivilized and so base, I think.
And also sorry, you go ahead, Chris, then I'll say something. Oh, Chris, you're going to have to F5.
Unfortunately, I have to F5.
All right, I'll say my thing, and then you F5, and then say your thing when you come back. Sorry, mate. So my point was going to be, especially for people who preach about individualism and the importance of the individual, to then deny people their individuality seems to me completely hypocritical. There's also, I think, the issue of changing the values in a society. In terms of what I value, and I'll just say this quickly and then hand it over to Chris, is when it comes to the role of the state in people's relationships beyond contract enforcement and taxes and provision of benefits and whatnot. I wish we would put the energy that people put into all kinds of same-sex marriage outrage and trans outrage into abuse.
Yeah.
Child abuse, domestic abuse, in any relationship.
Yeah.
That's what I think, where society's focus and also the government's focus for protecting people and providing services to get people out of dangerous situations should be, and also providing in schools, in your sexual health courses, signs of abuse and resources for abuse and what constitutes abuse under the laws and where you're growing up. Because if people don't have that information when they're in school, when are they going to figure it out when it's already too late and they don't know the procedures of a police complaint or laws in their state? So that's where I want to see the efforts put. Then I'll kick it over to Chris.
Well, one of the reasons I think a lot of the channels got popular, other than outrage, is that it gives, for as much as they hate the term safe space, but it gives safe space for people who don't want to ever actually think about things and change their minds on things. I think about myself and how I've evolved over the past 9 years, and I've looked at my old videos from way back when, and I go, some of this is stuff I wouldn't even think anymore.
Yeah,
but,
you finish.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I think some of it's like libertarians can't accept man-made global warming because it requires collective action, and that is a non-libertarian thing. So that's all I have.
Yeah, for me, I definitely
on my first hangout with the Lonely Wolf, just him and I, stuff like that, he was asking me of how like YouTube has like changed my political beliefs. In the past 2 years, it has significantly changed my political beliefs. It also made me aware of like trans people and stuff like that. A person can be a trans woman without transitioning at all because it's like expensive for hormone replacement therapy, or it's like expensive for the surgery and stuff like that. So if like I meet like you had on your hangout not too long ago, a actual joke, she is a trans woman, not really passing, but that is her gender, so I should be respectful of her and her gender and something like that. And that's kind of like I had a similar event when Garrett had his old channel. He had a hangout with just trans people on his channel, and that made me aware. It's like there are people who are trans who don't pass as their correct gender or something like that, so I should be respectful of that. It's like, okay, so I will be mindful of my language and how I choose pronouns and stuff like that, and it's okay for me to ask what is that person's preferred pronouns, and if I don't know, I will revert to they, because that's an acceptable pronoun and stuff like that. One thing, okay, aside, another topic, Milo Yiannopoulos. It's kind of interesting how the conservatives wanted to kick Milo Yiannopoulos out once it came to light, and how he was advocating for 13-year-olds to have sexual relationships with 27-year-olds and stuff like that. But yet, some of the same conservatives or other conservatives were backing Roy Moore, who thankfully lost in that election for the Alabama Senate seat.
Close though, but at least he lost.
Yeah, it was close.
Just something I want to say about how popular these people are. It seems like there's something, I don't know if there's probably a name for it. I call it the internet magnification theory, that the internet makes these people look more popular than they actually are in reality, in the real world. And the reason why they congregate online is because, as was said, they can't find this in real life, because a lot of people don't share these beliefs, and they never will, because they're so extreme in the beginning. So they go online to find an area where they can meet out, a safe space, if you will. And that's what these channels are, basically. It's a bubble, echo chamber, forces of solitude that they have. That comic reference. So that's why people like starting like 600,000 subscribers, and Amazing is like 1 million. And I actually in the Amazing Atheist army like a long time ago, like this is like 10 years ago. But I get it. We started bashing feminism around like 2011. So I know what it's like to be in that area sometimes. Just to get out of it, it's like taking a blue or red pill, and waking up and realizing how wrong you were in the first place.
Yeah, I used to listen to a local radio host in the Seattle area that is definitely not a feminist, and he has some anti-feminist views, I guess. He thinks is why do we need feminists nowadays, basically along those lines. And so I used to kind of like think the same way. We don't need feminism, or what about the men's and stuff like that. But in the past 2 years, I'm just like, no, wait a minute, no, the patriarchy is real, systemic racism is real, and stuff like that. And no, we still need feminism today, even though the laws are equal on paper, but we need to change society's mindset as a general sense or something like that. There's still progress that needs to be made, as evidenced with like Trump and people like Sargon and stuff like that.
And hashtag me too.
And hashtag me too, yeah. And I noticed like when that hashtag was first trending on Twitter and stuff like that, on my Facebook feed, it's like I did notice me too and some of that. But other men were also sharing their personal experience of being victims of sexual assault. They didn't use the Me Too hashtag, but they did share their stories of other women, older women, just acting inappropriate against them, especially in one case when the guy was really young and stuff like that. And but also a few men in my Facebook feed were coming out saying, I'm really sorry, I acted inappropriate in the past towards women and towards other women, so I'm really sorry about that. And I also did that too, essentially. So yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, in terms of like, especially, I have to say, I was, doing my PhD and I was heavily involved with American, like sitting elections and British elections, but trans issues are something that came on my radar because of my involvement on YouTube. And I went from, in 2012, knowing zero trans people to now getting on probably double digits, including in my own life. And so that's been, for me, when I talked about with an actual joke, sometimes you're the teacher, sometimes you're the student. I've had to be a student on a lot of these issues and listen to a lot of people. And and so it's been a learning thing for me too, in order to make sure my feminism is complete. That it's womanism. It's for me, I don't understand. I just because I don't really talk about turf issues very much because my position on it is one of bemusement. I don't get it. I don't understand the obsession with the sort of essentialist notion that that somehow being a woman can be boiled down to a biological thing that we all have to agree on yes or no, when biological sex is so complicated itself with primary and secondary characteristics and genetic and chromosomal and hormonal elements to it, and also what people who are resistant to so the androgen, is that what the masculine hormone is? Anyway, I'm getting off my
testosterone is a masculine hormone. Is as estrogen, that's the feminine hormone. But both
right, but it starts with an A. I know it starts with an A. But anyway, for me, it's the category.
Yeah.
Right. It's sort of the general category of woman, and then within that category, you could have lesbian women, you can have trans women, you can have women of color, you can have straight white women like me. You just have women, and women's problems are what concern me. Well, so I don't understand having this. I just sort of say I don't. I just reject sort of the premise that the question itself is even important. And that's kind of why I don't do a lot of stuff on turfism, because I think a rather simplistic rejection of it at a sort of base level.
Yeah, I love ContraPoint's video on that with that character. Dost thou bleed? That's a t-shirt now.
Yeah, and were you going to say something? I heard someone pop up, and I thought
that's saying something. Yeah.
Well, I tend to think with like turf issues, I agree with you as far as like the legitimacy of them. But I will say that I find you really have to, and this is my first Hangout, but it's not my first time on the internet. I've battled turfs for a long time. I started Trans Advocate in 2002. So I've had a lot of these issues come up. And I feel like that you have to, because there's media out there that basically, the media now doesn't care about facts. They want controversy, they want eyeballs, and that's it.
What sells?
It's yeah. And so basically, I think like with people like Milo and all these Sargon, and I think the nature of how you defeat them is you defeat their arguments, but don't address their controversy, and that's a fine line, because if you just say, for the longest time in the gay community, in the queer community that I'm a part of, people would say, "Oh, just ignore Milo," and you can't do that. He got a platform that was bigger than the community, and at that point, there wasn't a lot. I mean, what happened? Like, basically, as a queer person, I just kind of went, "Yeah, I saw that coming a long time ago," but you have to give it as much legitimacy as it has in public, or it grows.
Yeah.
I think you mean that you should take it seriously, even if it's doesn't have any legitimacy.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I wish, to be honest with you, I wish I didn't have to deal with this, especially in the UK. I mean, we just had someone from one of the tabloids over here, well, is the Times, I don't know if that's considered a tabloid or not, but came out with they dug into this trans group's Twitter feed from like 5 years back or something like that for a tweet that basically it said the only 10,000 cops, the only good 10,000 cops or 10,000 dead cops or something like that. It was an outrageous tweet, but they went digging for this and basically put this trans group that right now is advocating for changes to what's the Gender Rights Act, which there's no debate in this. The changes that they're talking about have already happened in Scotland and 3 or 4 other, and it just basically centers around self-determination rather than having to go to a doctor to self-identify, get your stuff changed and do all the stuff that you do when you're trans. And literally, I mean, you have all this stuff coming out, the anti-trans stuff coming out at a time where they're talking about changing legislation, and this is something that is impactful of trans people's lives. I mean, I really get angry when like I've heard a couple progressive forums that I'm on. I would hear people talk about not electing Hillary Clinton as being some, things are going to get better, blah blah blah, and all this stuff, and it'll be bad, but it'll get better. And I'm like, the people that always say that, it's always cis white men, because they're the last people that are going to be affected by this. I mean, and trans people, especially trans women of color, are going to be the first people that are affected by this, and they already are with Trump's presidency. You have kids that are basically, if they're in school, all that stuff that was pro-trans, for kids in school, that's all gone away with Trump, with the election of Trump, the day he came into office. I mean, so there are things that are, and you can't, I mean, I joke around and say, I am for voting, because you can't say trans in his administration. But that being said, I think when it comes to these issues, they have a real impact, whether it be trans rights or Black Lives Matter or stuff like that. The legislation and the politicians and the discussion, the media around it is important, and the discussions need to be framed in a way that's honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just look at the way that, Jordan Peterson and others were running around with their hair on fire over extending human rights protections to trans people, as if the police were going to be going around monitoring your conversations, and if you insult someone. I mean, that's how they portrayed it for a while, and it had been smashed down enough on it. I don't know where Peterson is of late, but I think Worski got it right, at least I think he got it right. I was kind of like half listening as I was like cleaning my house on a Sunday. The Sunday is clean my house day, and to have my patron hang out, if that's exactly it's kind of Sunday. But yeah, sorry, Jonathan, you were gonna say something?
Jordan Peterson, the transition and stuff like that. That's what I was about to mention. Michael Rowan's recent video, his first feminist videos, he tackled the whole issue about like the conspiracy that like, oh, you're going to be jailed for like I accidentally misgendered person someone once, and he covered like I think he covered 16, but he definitely covered the New York bill that the rationals were just like up in arms about and stuff like that, and he explains like, no, it just like include trans into the group of people you cannot discriminate against and stuff like that. Like, and CC Singh did the same thing, where it's just include gender identity and gender expression in the group you cannot discriminate against for official documents and official proceedings as a government agent and stuff like that.
Yeah, and to M's point, in their hysteria about this ends up directly, potentially, shall we say, impacting the life of trans people who become hostile unnecessarily to potentially, trans people in their own life or online. And that does impact the quality of life. This isn't even just like how the legislation itself, or, but how you're saying how these groups or how some individuals behave online in order to be so transphobic, aggressively transphobic. If I'm getting you right, Em. I see you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah. I tend to mute myself.
No, it's appreciated.
I mean, I come from old school. I used to do not podcasting, but a live
Radio.
Yeah, live radio show. And so muting was something that I did pretty often because I was broadcasting from home. But the thing is, it's funny because I popped in and I didn't know what you guys were talking about as far as Jordan Peterson goes, but I just had a peek. And even how it's framed as far as talking about people losing their jobs and the Canadian laws and stuff like that. It's all if you go back and look at what is being talked about with the fact, not emotion, but the facts, you see all this stuff is peeled away. It's false. It's just it's pearl clutching.
Yeah.
It literally is just pearl clutching because if you're talking about, I mean, so many people were upset when the I think it was Dr. Blanchard up in Canada. Basically, he was fired, but he was fired for a reason. He was doing reparative therapy on trans kids, and it's pretty much been rejected by the entire by most of these psychological or psychiatry medical community, and I think that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's along the same lines as reparative therapy for gay kid. It's damaging.
Yeah, the gay conversion therapy that all those people talk about all the time, like Michelle Bachman's husband tried to do for all those years. People remember her or not, but I don't know if it's sport, but I'm actually Canadian, so people like Peterson and that Blanchard guy, and all the alt-right people from Canada, because there's a lot of them too, right? Like actually, a lot of the attracted women of the alt-right are Canadian for some reason. I don't know why. It's weird, man. It's weird. It's just how that turns out. But they picked the wrong country to be born in if they think that they're gonna. This stuff is barely acceptable in America. Why would it be acceptable in a country that's more progressive, in many ways? Had gay marriage and gay rights for since the early 2000s. Is working on trans rights now. Is legalizing marijuana next summer. They was working on the tax deal, so that's going forward no matter what. Is this I think I know what fantasy land they live in. Well, actually, I do know what fantasy land they live in. It's called the alt-right internet, but it's just kind of sad to see that these people are from my country, and there's actually far-right groups in our country too, mostly in Quebec. One's called Lamute, which is like the wolf, I believe. I wish Leto was here; she could tell us. But they have a rally every so often, and they're basically like free speech absolutists in real life that just have more. They're less scared to be, identified, so they go in the open, and there's always a counter protest there as well, like in the States. So that's always good to see.
Yeah.
It is the case that when people when a movement gets part of the mainstream, it actually gets a lot of backlash, as feminists know, and people in the civil rights movements know, and I think in some ways the backlash is a symptom of the progress. It's not a symptom; it's a sign of the progress. And so, I think who was it before was comparing it with gay rights movement and normalizing gay people, and that and love is love. That whole sort of marriage equality campaign. So we've got this sort of, we'll probably have a generational shift. It'll probably be faster than other movements have been in the past, but that doesn't mean things are great now. It doesn't mean we can rest on our laurels or try. I try to be a good ally, and that is how I think I can best carry stuff forward. And as I learn, bring up, you know, like having people on my channel who can teach me and who can teach others. And I think that's, Jonathan was saying, being on YouTube exposes you to so many things that you wouldn't get if you were offline, especially across a lot of parts of North America that are quite rural, you know. But kind of bringing this back a little bit to like a little bit of like the YouTube community, I do find it very interesting that on the alt-right skeptic TM side of YouTube, there are people who, because they really like Blair White, are very offended when she is misgendered, and that seems to create divisions. You know, so it's interesting that that's to me, I think it's a little bit like the way that the right pretty much doesn't fight about marriage equality. I think there's still a lot of homophobia in there, but in terms of an actual, like, people saying we should roll back marriage equality, I can't think of a single person who says that. So that's kind of been accepted, but not really normalized, or it's not been made a point where you can't slur someone based on their sexuality, basically. But I do think that that's an interesting development on the right, that you have, because they have somebody that they know, getting back to, like, you know, the importance of how knowing people who are trans has really educated me on the topic, that there is this big division between people who are very much fans of Blair and respect her, and as a consequence have, you know, had their consciousnesses raised a little bit, maybe in a small way, but a first step, right, is a good one. I do think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Also, and furthermore, a lot of things I noticed about the alt-right on YouTube, anyways, the rationals, quite a lot of them are actually for trans rights, like Shoe on Head, for example. So I thought maybe like that's an area we could come at them with, and maybe that get them kind of to you know, be more accepting of other things. Maybe,
yeah, well,
I don't think that's the point, but
she's not exactly woke. I mean, she also when they tried to add the brown and black, I mean, she might be like more of an outspoken person who's taken good positions in the past. I will certainly stipulate that. But when she mocked adding the brown and black stripe to the LGBT flag, saying that race wasn't an LGBT issue, I was like, oh, girl.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, she's one of my people, so she's somebody I pay more attention to than those other wankers. But like, it's just like there's some things that she gets, something of course a lot of things she doesn't get, but she just seem to get the trans part of it anyway. But that's something exposed anyway.
Yeah, sometimes it depends on like who you're friends with. I think for Shu, she probably did in the past didn't have like as much favorable views of like trans people, but maybe recently her opinions of those people have changed with like the friendship that she has made with Claudia Brown, Ranting Feminist, and ContraPoints as well, and stuff like that. So, but there's also. Right as well, but there's also something to be said is like how you approach someone that may have like troublesome views and stuff like that. You gotta like know where they are, because I think I've been like talking to like someone on Twitter and stuff like that like he said like the R word, and I said, listen, I would appreciate it if you don't say the R word because I don't like that and stuff like that. And I think he's willing to like change his views or change his use of that word because of that. But it would have been much different if like he didn't know me at all, and I said, oh, you hate, you are an ableist person or a racist or a transphobe or something like that because you use that word. It does have the effect on some people to just shut them off, to being open-minded to listening to the criticism if they just automatically get slapped with a label of racism and stuff like that. So now there's some people you can't convince, unfortunately, but if there are some people, especially young people, that maybe you can just like be friends with or friendly with at least and stuff like that, they might be willing to listen to you. Is that I appreciate it if you would not use that word or something like that, or not think that way, or at least listen to what I have to say about that situation.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, I think that I understand what you're saying, because I've seen it now, you know, twice myself, also with using retarded as a slur is how I'll say it, because I don't think there's a problem with the word. I think it's using it as a slur, and both times I didn't have a conversation with the two people I'm thinking about while they were having the fight. It was sort of like after the fight, talking about the fight, and me going, yeah, but you understand that this word is becoming very passé, and remember how gay used to be okay, and you don't use gay. I think you have to kind of accept that that word is going in the same direction. And it was never around the actual use of it like in real time. But I also totally get that it's that requires, for a lot of people, like if someone says the N-word and a Black person objects, they have to swallow the hurt and very nicely and politely offer to correct the other person and maybe be slapped in the face and called it again. You know, so the idea that it's up to the oppressed to be really thoughtful and polite to the people who are using offensive slurs, you know, in this case, or the offended, not the oppressed in this case, but the people who are the slur is intended to offend are offended, having to be the ones to walk someone through their education. I understand why that's a frustration, and that's where I think allies come in.
Yeah.
And that's where when you, like in this case, you know, I didn't get involved in the fight, but afterwards I talked to the person using the problematic term and kind of like, hey, think about this. I know you don't mean it. And I know you didn't say you are. You said that thing is. But I just don't know if this is the hill you want to die on. Use it with your friends, you know, when in private, but on Twitter, in social media, maybe leave it off because it's more trouble than it's worth. But that I think is probably the best role that allies can play, whether it's on issues of insulting language or mediating transphobia or racism or sexism. But yeah, some people, there's that sometimes requires being friends with people whose views you very much disagree with. And I don't have a lot of friends that I strongly have views that I disagree with, because I have quite a lot of friends whose views I can reasonably disagree with, and I have a lot of people in my life already. So it's kind of hard to keep up with everybody I like spending time with.
Don't you think it's approach? Because I'll give you, for instance, recently at work, one of my coworkers, we were in a discussion and I said something about surgery, and it didn't mean anything about trans or anything like that. But then he asked me, he's like, are you saying you've had surgery? And I said, well, that's not something that's correct. That's something that you never should ask a trans person. And I said, I'll tell you why. I said, what if I said to you, so how'd that operation on your penis go? And it was funny because he just went, wow, I get it.
So I just went on.
But at the same time, I mean, I'm conflicted when it comes to this kind of thing, because allyship, I mean, good allyship basically is not speaking for another group when they're present, but when they're not present, standing up basically. And when it comes to trans rights, I can think of a couple times, especially when it comes to race, where when there wasn't a Black person around and someone said something that was not the N-word, but something that was racist. Of course, they framed it with, I'm not racist, but, you know, and I went in and said, well, you know, if you have to qualify it, it is racist. And then I told them why. But there's a point at which you go up against a wall, and it's like, do you continue to have dialogue with someone that is very, is that negative? I coming back around to the YouTube community, I kind of think that it's like Bayard Rustin, who was a civil rights leader in the 60s, who actually organized the March on Washington and was gay. Not a lot of people know of him because he was gay and he was ostracized a lot. But the reason Martin Luther King was nonviolent was because of Bayard Rustin. But he made a comment about gay rights being the next litmus test, like civil rights was. And he said, our goal isn't to get heterosexual people to like us. Just like the civil rights movement, it wasn't our goal to get white people to like us. The goal is so that they can't actively manifest their hate in public. And I'm starting to see these masses of people coming together in these online communities because they're essentially semi-anonymous, and people can manifest their hate in groups. I
would agree with that. I think that it's basically what you're describing is he was describing the conditions of political correctness, where the idea was that slurs and sexism and other forms of bigotry aren't acceptable. In public places, are not acceptable to say to people on the streets. And Trump has pretty much been a backlash to being open with your bigotry again. And we're living through an era where people think that it's edgy and cool to say those things because it's defined the conventions of respect and tolerance that we were working not entirely successfully, but society was at least linguistically less aggressively bigoted in the kinds of things that were coming out of politicians and political leaders. And, more like, thought, not, I don't want to call Steve Bannon a thought leader, but prominent figures in politics.
Because there is no thought.
Right? And this is Milo's, I think it was Anti-Social Media. This is the second shout out he's gotten in a video for me, and like 2 videos in a row. But he's
awesome.
Yeah. He put up the first chapter where he did the excerpt from Milo's Dangerous book. And in it, he does say he wants conservatism to be the new cool. He wants it to be for the patriarchal, misogynist, cis white male to be the sort of James Dean of today. And everyone wants to be him. I think that's what he would like, or maybe with gay men too, But I think you're seeing a complete attack on the notion that you should be free from active manifestation of malice in public, which is precisely what you were describing. You're quoting the earlier gentleman as saying.
Well, it's funny because what you said about Milo and him being gay, I found that there's 2 kinds of gay men. There's gay men, or there's men that like other men, and then there's men that hate women. And there's there's a big part of the gay community that has a misogyny problem. And I think Milo's a manifestation of that.
That's an interesting critique. I hadn't heard it before, but when I look at his behavior, it's not just that he prefers men. You're right, that there is something about like a revulsion at women. And obviously certain women who agree with him and he likes, that's fine. But when it comes to sort of the threat of women in terms of equality and having an equal voice and opinion on things and not being, harassed into silence. Yeah.
And that's that's the offense of what trans women, especially, that's one of his targets is trans women. And I think that's pretty telling because it's anti-woman. I mean, he literally is offended that, and talk about Snowflake, he's offended that someone would basically become a woman. That's to me that's so much homophobia is born out of misogyny.
It shames me. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to finish. I didn't want to interrupt you. But yeah, so much is born out of misogyny. Okay, sorry, Em, you muted yourself. I just want to say it shames me that it was a University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, and Em, I want your reaction to this, where he outed the trans student. And I'm ashamed because they allowed that guy on their campus to basically endanger a student at that campus. And that alone, I think, should be grounds for Milo to be banned from every university campus, including Berkeley. I don't think he should be allowed to step foot on campuses and promote and speak to a crowd because he has a history of putting people in danger, right? Well, and so he is a threat to those students.
It's funny because before I moved here in 2016, I lived in Madison, Wisconsin, so I'm familiar.
So Tom's from Wisconsin. I worked in Madison. I lived in Sun Prairie before I left, and another Wisconsinite. Woo!
Yeah, I lived off of Fish Hatchery Road, if you're familiar with Madison.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I drove that road a lot.
So, but yeah, I moved to Madison on purpose in like 2009. Purposely because it was one of the most liberal places. But when it comes to Milo endangering people, and he's offended at trans women, because the ultimate insult is
way to degrade yourself.
Yeah, in their mind is to either become woman-like.
Right.
Sturcar is in the live chat. Hello, Sturcar. Sturcar, like I said in the live chat, I love your chat that you had with like another guy. I forgot who his name is, but he's also been on live streams with like Joe from Arcadian Times and stuff like that. I love your video, the chat that you had with that guy about Lindsay Shepherd, the TA from Canada, that in a grammar class showed a clip of from a debate that Jordan Peterson had with another person that caused a kerfuffle and stuff like that. Philo Skeptical. That was the other guy you were on the live chat yet. So I love that video and love that live chat. It's like 4 hours, but I love that people have like been talking about that, because that was kind of an interesting situation that I wish more people would talk about. But anyway, you had a question, and I want to bring up the question to the stream chat here: is can someone explain as to why misogyny is related to homophobia? He said I can understand the crossover and stuff like that.
Em, do you want to take this one, because you were already speaking to it and you have an insight, and I can add anything I think, from my perspective that you didn't cover?
Well, I think when it comes to if so many people, you'll see, you can. It's funny. There was a person that was down in Gainesville, Florida, that was really against trans women and public accommodation, and basically it means bathrooms. And he was very concerned, and he was part of this protest, and had these really vulgar anti-trans commercials and everything. And guess who got arrested a couple years later taking pictures of women in toilets and bathrooms? This guy. But that's not unusual. It's the people that are the most threatened by trans women or gays or anything like that. Typically, it's because there's something inside themselves where they either see a threat or a vulnerability. And when we see those things in ourselves, typically, because honestly, most people don't give a shit what trans people do, because they are okay with it's kind of like with bisexuals. A lot of people want to act like bisexuals don't exist because it's a threat, because then, well, gosh, if I can choose who I sleep with, oh my God, there's a whole lot of things. But as far as misogyny being a component of homophobia, especially when it comes to men, when you're talking about men, you're talking about people that are upset about what they perceive as female acts, or as being female-like or being woman-like, whether that's their presentation or their how do I say this in a polite way, being receiving sex, being traditionally female, in so many different ways. Things that are perceived as being gendered, that ends up being anti-women, because that's the worst thing that you can be as a quote real man.
Yeah,
it's a power dynamic, basically. If you saw like any of the Golden Ones videos that Kevin really made fun of, it's the whole getting effed versus being the person that does the effing. That's basically what sums it up, I think, the whole thing. Also, furthermore, there's a lot of violent anti-gay people are actually gay themselves. I call it the Ted Haggard effect. If you don't remember Ted Haggard from back in the day, yeah. So a lot of these hate preachers like him, they turn out to be they're found to be gay later on, in the closet. People even
They hate them.
They
hate gays so much because they hate themselves so much.
It's like reverse internalization projection, something like that. They call it something like that, maybe. And they just go in, they get churches, and they just unload, right? A lot of congressmen that are anti-gay. There's a guy found in the Minnesota airport, that famous case,
Yeah, it was the senator from Iowa.
The Minnesota airport guy.
Yeah, he said I don't go around hitting on men. If I do, I'm going to do it in Boise, Idaho. And it's like, oh wow, geez, that's like homophobic, and like you're hating on your own state that you represent, and stuff like that with that kind of statement. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
I think on the issue of sort of like misogyny within the within the gay community, the gay men, so lesbian gay men community. If we go back, I think sometimes it's hard for us, people who are of progressive mind and value humanism and the idea that there's human equality, sort of regardless of your sex or sexuality or gender identity. You're a human being. That's a fundamental base level of rights and dignities that we think as another human being you are entitled to. But most of history, people have not thought about other people like that, and especially on the gender lines or on the sex lines, I should say. In the aggregate, the genders of men and women, the roles were men owned women, and that is institutionalized in the church. It was seen in government and in economics, and we're starting to see those changes now. But the cultural, the norm legacy, the value legacy of that, I think I can see very easily where, if you are already in a society which is patriarchal, so men are in powerful roles, or women, if they do occupy them, they behave in quite masculine ways, and then they're replaced by a man quite quickly, as Margaret Thatcher was in Milo's case. The Iron Lady, right? Very, very emotionless and controlled, and all the things that men are supposed to be. But so you grow up with that idea of it's natural for men to rule, women are less, and then you have a gay relationships, and you're around men. Like I see it like public schools like Eton, right? You get into these very masculine cultures where women are not only sort of, not fit to rule, but they're othered, as Jonathan brought up before. And so that contempt can associate with alienation. So if you choose to hang out primarily with other men, you're not going to get a lot of experience with women that you go, oh, you know what, women are okay. And then you can, and the other thing I think it's important to maybe tie this back to is if you go back to ancient Greece, we know that in some cities they practiced adult men with other free younger men would have homosexual relationships. And one of the benefits that they said they got from those was that unlike the relationships they had with their wives, the relationship they had with the younger men to the older men was a relationship of equals. Equals in status, equals in education, equals in sort of values and ability to talk about things and share experiences. And so I think you can see why that nexus of male bonding has been narrowed by those sort of exclusion of women's human dignity throughout history, and challenging that now in some areas like the gay community that maybe was by necessity because they didn't want to be arrested and thrown in jail for being gay, were quite exclusive and quite male dominated. And so those kinds of attitudes really could have a place to breed and be shared. So just my thoughts on it.
Another thing I was like just thinking as well is just like maybe it's like, wait a minute, you like be with other guys and something like that. Why can't you be with women and own women like the natural order or something? So I think that's maybe how like those kind of things intersect and stuff like that.
That's a ton of toxic masculinity in that way. Was someone else going to jump in on that?
I definitely think that is toxic masculinity. I mean, so much of what we have right now, especially in the YouTube kind of owning kind of
Recponage culture, yeah.
It has to do around with Lindy West did she did a post on I forget where it was at, but she literally interviewed one of her trolls. And it was very interesting to see. And basically, the guy a halfway decent guy, but he just basically said it was something he did for a game, and
Yeah.
And I almost see this as like, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just having fun, and it's kind of like picking on like boys, toxic masculinity in a small form. When you see it on the playground, it's a bunch of boys being around, beating the shit out of another little boy because he's, for whatever reason. I mean, kids, if you watch them, like they mimic what they see, but when you see something like that, like on the playground, I can remember seeing that happening when you'd have this manifestation of toxic masculinity, in that whenever it's like, and you said it too, as far as like it's almost like locker room kind of thing, where it's this kinship of it's point scoring.
Boys will be boys and stuff like that, and like who can like prove their manliness is better than the others and stuff like that. That's true in geek culture as well, where it's just tied back to like the earlier conversation about Gamergate. Even though they're geeks, they're not traditional masculine looking kind of people and stuff like that. They still exhibit masculine kind of traits and geek masculine and stuff like that. I know more about video games than you and stuff like that, and that can get toxified almost quite quickly and to extreme form, as we've seen in Gamergate and some of that. Pop Culture Detective also did a video about like geek misogyny as well and stuff like that, where it's like, hey, we were not the traditional kind of like misogynist assholes like the jocks and like the Revenge of the Nerds and stuff like that. We're the nerds. We're not as misogynist as them, but yet they still actually have very dangerous views of women as well and stuff like that, which has been quite covered, and Gamergate was kind of like it exposes that as well to the mainstream.
Right, I see Troy joined us, and you took your mic off. So Troy, now that you're kind of caught up, welcome. Do you want to join the conversation on this topic?
Yeah. One of the things that's weird about, because I guess we live in a culture that's very much, highly sexualized and all that. So it's a bit, so being, openly asexual is a bit of a strange thing when, and that's something that you have to sort of come to terms with a lot when, people tie the idea of being manly with being someone who's, very sexually active. So it was, growing up, it was a bit, I guess it was kind of alienating. So I had to kind of learn to come to terms with myself at a very, very early age. So, that's why I sort of had to reject a lot of, societal norms about. So I pretty much, openly rejected pretty much all of the, I guess, the so-called imposed sort of gender roles that people think of.
Yeah, but and personally, in my experience, if you mention that you are a late bloomer, like in high school or around the college age and stuff like that, people find that strange. Like, what? You never been with a girl? Why? It's like, I just spend my time playing video games and watching anime. What? It's so difficult for some people to comprehend someone choosing not to engage in sex and stuff like that, because to them, sex is awesome. Everyone enjoys sex, right? But then when they see people who go against the normal and stuff like that, it can be a culture shock to them. Oh, sorry, Chris, F5.
We'll hold the spot for you, though.
Yeah, I guess I'll fill in there if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So, I have a friend who is a woman, who's my father's best friend's daughter, who I taught with in Korea, who doesn't want to ever have a boyfriend or a husband. She is, I guess you call it asexual, but she is straight, because we talked about it, and I said, "Sure that you're not just a lesbian, right?" She says, "No, I like men. I just don't want to have a sexual relationship with any of them." I said, "Okay, very well." And then she's going to have like artificial insemination for to have children, because she wants to have children. So, but the whole thing is like strange to a lot of people, including myself, because it's outside of the normal spectrum of of being being gay or straight, basically. So it is kind of, it really mind bends a lot of people, I find, when people say stuff like that. And but I talked about it, so I understand it more now, that like some people, there's a very small minority of people that are just not attracted to anybody, period. So, or have no sexual desire, period, I guess is the way of putting it. So
I found. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Chris, you go ahead. You were up because we have to F5. So
That's all right.
Quick.
You mentioned Revenge of the Nerds. I actually think that's an interesting time capsule into what kind of misogyny was acceptable in geek culture itself. And some of that has never gone away. But Big Bang Theory, for instance, is incredibly misogynist. But Revenge of the Nerds, I mean, one of the guys out and out raped somebody.
Yeah.
So, and he was the hero,
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
a different time, as they say.
Right. Yeah, Pop Culture Detective did cover that because his focus on his geek culture misogyny was the Big Bang Theory, but he decided to go back to the Breakfast Club, no, Sixteen Candles, and the Revenge of the Nerds, and how those things. How those things were just it put out the blueprint for geek misogyny and stuff like that. And so, and that's a good point. It's like that. I didn't think when I watched Revenge of the Nerds as a kid, I didn't think much of that scene and stuff like that. That's cool. That nerd get to do it with the hot chick, with the chick thinking that he was someone else and stuff like that. But now thinking about it, it's like, no, that is rape. She did not consent to you having sex with her. The fact she was okay with it because that sex was good, it doesn't matter. She did not consent at first.
Yeah. Before anybody goes on, I do apologize. My medicine is kicking my ass, and I'm going to have to drop out.
No worries, Tom. I decided to try to not put you on the spot too many times, but I'm glad you were able to stick around and participate as much as you have.
I'm leaving it a very bad time because it's so interesting, and Troy just came in.
Just put the live stream on when you fall asleep.
I won't. I can do that, I suppose. Anyway, thanks everybody. I hope everybody's day goes well and everybody has equality and prosperity and no Trump whatsoever at all ever.
Well, I have bourbon with me to make eggnog, like I showed in the last Hangout.
Well, that's I can't do that, but that's a good.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, Tom. I'll drink for you, and I'll drink for you too, Chris, as well.
Thank you.
Well, I'll see you.
See you, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
I mean, it must have been interesting to rouse me out of my sleep.
Is that what did it? You were listening to us while you were trying to fall asleep, and it got too interesting to fall asleep, so you just joined the line.
I sort of got. I got woken up because it's like 6 a.m. at the moment.
Oh.
But I like to think that we were so interesting we woke you up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been going for 2 hours. We
have been going a long time, to be honest.
Yeah, longer than with Revenge of the Nerds, I kind of thought that a long time ago that it was like an empowerment movie for people that were made fun of nerds. But now I just realized, oh my god, it's actually they disempowered someone else to empower these people. So it's kind of
that's
never good. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, well, that's the thing about being a geek and being picked on in school and stuff like that, or just on the greater topic of abuse. Unfortunately, abuse just creates more abuse because it is often the case where the abuse the abusee becomes an abuser, and others like MovieBob has actually mentioned that because he was picked on in school, he has picked on others that are weaker than him, and that is something that's you just have to like stop at yourself and stuff like that. And so
And there's a huge difference between teaching kids to defend themselves and you know, teaching, and in terms of like anti-bullying programs and teaching, and letting and basically thinking it's okay to harass somebody. So basically what I want to say is that when you have anti-bullying education and you're taught to identify like what a bully is and how to deal with it and how to whatever the procedures are, people will criticize that as sort of like in the defense of bullying somehow makes you a better person, or it makes you tougher, or it prepares you for the world in some way. And honestly, there are ways that we can emotionally develop as people that don't include mental and emotional abuse, especially not for kids. You know, and the thing is that I think there are just as you said, you know, people who may have been bullied or who bullied others, and they've never really resolved the problems that drove their bullying, and they stay bullies as adults.
I think one of the worst aspects of bullying is those who don't do anything about it.
Dang it, you're almost there. Give me F5.
I thought he was just like a little bit low. I didn't think he was roboting.
Oh, okay. Wait, maybe start again and try a bit louder. Maybe we won't have to F5 you.
Oh, I said I think one of the problems with bullying is the people who don't do anything about it. The people who actually are okay with it.
I mean, that's the one thing about the saying is that, like, in order for evil to triumph, good people do nothing or something like that. I think I messed it up. So like, what's required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah, because by excusing it, you're enabling it and you're perpetuating it.
Or not talking about it as well, or being just complacent in it, then you are in like. Not doing anything about it. Yeah.
Well, I find it interesting that are you guys familiar with the Keaton-Jones controversy going on right now?
No, can you give us the background?
Well, basically, it was a viral video of this kid that got bullied.
Oh, yes, but
school.
yeah, please go on.
And then it come to find out later that the parents are they've done videos with Confederate flags, and there's some accusations of racism, basically. And I found I digging into my own kind of issues and stuff. So many times these kind of things are super complex because it's not an either or kind of thing, like you guys are saying, that a lot of times the abuser or the person that's abused goes on to abuse themselves, and that's pretty textbook. But that being said, I think more than anything, it's about teaching. I mean, it does come around to humanist values and teaching your kids that through your own example. I mean, you said earlier you didn't know a lot of trans people, but I'm a trans activist, or in the UK we call them campaigners. But I think the most effective tool for any kind of activist or campaigner is one-to-one connections with people, because once you humanize someone, then it's a lot harder to discriminate or hate them or bully them. Objectifying people, I mean, that's how we get people to go into war, is we objectify them to the point where they can take a life and not think about the humanity of a person. I think I think it's important that we promote humanist values that promote connection.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. Because when I get to know people, I've sort of changed a few minds about, I guess, people who might have thought, oh, asexuality is not a thing. Like, there's got to be some, you have to have some attraction to see, you have to choose somebody. But then, once they get to know someone's story, or you might explain to them, and they get to know you as a person, that it's a little easier for people to come to terms with complex ideas.
Well, and I don't think, like, I'm probably one of those people that don't understand how. Well, personally, I couldn't be asexual myself, so it's hard for me to understand. But to be honest with you, it doesn't matter to me what you do with your body, your life, your sex life, or lack of thereof, or your love life. That the connections that we have to each other, I think that is the biggest way to combat a lot of these problems is connection. But at the same time, you have to keep yourself safe, because there are people that, for example, if you're asexual, there are people that are going to sit there and say, well, I don't know how you could be that way, blah blah blah, that's not natural. And it's like, yeah, it is natural.
One of the things I used to say to people who would go on about gay sex or whatever, say, what do you do with the other 23 hours and 58 minutes of your day?
It takes a minute. Who told you that?
But it's true, like that othering is a reduction, reducing people down is a form of, way to other them. Yeah.
I mean, as a geek, I would say I have over 1,000 video games. I spend this many hours on playing video games, watching anime, and people have said, get a life. And it's like, what kind of life? I play video games. I have infinite lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, Troy's right in terms of anything that goes beyond what is people expect. You just have people walking up and just being surprised and having to kind of explain yourself. And I only have a small taste of that. I went to India a few years ago for a friend's wedding, and I went on my own, but I met up with friends when I was there. Sorry, I'm getting background from somebody. And while I was there, when I was traveling on my own and not with my group of friends, I would be asked, "Oh, are you with your husband?" I'm like, "No, I'm not married." They're like, "You're not married." Like this concept of a woman not married and traveling, it was just like every time it was, and I got so tired of having to explain my existence to people who were just being, polite and making small talk in whatever way. But it was, and I only had to live with that for, about 5 or 6 days. I can't imagine a whole lifetime of having to explain who you are as a person, because people are just like, what? Is that a thing you can do?
To be fair, it's like, especially as an adult now, it's just like, hey, if you don't have a girlfriend, that's fine. It's like, you do you and something like that. But definitely, like in high school or around other people, it's like, what? You don't have a girlfriend? That's not normal, and stuff like that. They don't say that, but that's what their expression is telling me, or something like that. So yeah.
When I was living in Korea, I got that a lot too from people because I wasn't married, and I remember one of the teachers, actually the head teacher at one of the schools I was at when I was there for 2 or 3 years, she said, "Oh, are you a playboy then?" I'm like, "No, I'm just not married yet. That's all." I had like Korean girlfriends there, and she's like, "Oh, you must not want to sell that." I'm like, "Just not the time, whatever." And still not married yet. Actually, I will be next summer, but
Oh, congratulations!
Maybe. Still 8 months off.
Well, sure. It is a lot about expectation, because I had a girl that had heavily hit on me in high school, when she found out I was trans, she was like, "Oh, so that's why you had no interest in me." Blah 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 blah. And I was like, "Well, I didn't say it, but in the back of my mind, I was like, well, it was because I wasn't interested. It didn't have anything to do with
just not that into you."
Yeah, yeah. but there's this expectation that, like, just because I'm trans, and I'm trans feminine, that I was interested in men, and that's I'm bisexual. So I mean, it's whatever. But
half right.
well, but people's expectation is that, especially in a heteronormative kind of culture, is that if you're a woman and you're putting yourself out there to a man, a cis man, that's how I was living at the time, that there's going to be interest automatically, and there's just these cultural expectations, and part of me, I sit there and go between, is this how we are as animals, or but then I think that's more of an excuse. It's
it's culture.
Yeah,
I agree. Because it doesn't exist. It hasn't had an opportunity to exist in the culture, so people have been deprived experiences with it, and so they come to it with a sense of what, and then of course we fear what we don't know, or we react hostile to it because it's something different. And I think in that case, then you're getting into something that is quite common to the human condition, in terms of we just tend to fear things because it kept us alive. Fearing rocks that might turn out to be like a nest of something was a really good idea, but as a consequence, we overcorrect in our modern life. We react in fear to things that actually aren't threats.
Well, and I hate to say this, but there's certain species that rape is a thing, and that doesn't mean that on down the line, as a species evolves, that can't go away.
Yeah, we do have a brain that is not just reptilian. We have a mammalian. We have a frontal lobe.
Exactly.
So we can make moral judgments. This is why I think biological essentialism is just such crap.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what kind of it makes my head want to pop, because when it comes to TERFs and things like that, when it comes to feminism, I believe that if we come to a point where you don't know what gender I am, or you don't, that it isn't an automatic based on pink and blue, and that only helps us kind of see the tapestry of life as a spectrum more than a binary, and to me that's going to help equality along.
Yeah, and in all honesty, you can't get aught from is, to quote David Hume. And there are going to be people who disagree that in terms of the aught from is, but just because, even if you say there are biological differences we can empirically establish, that doesn't tell us how we ought to treat each other in our society. That's a moral component that can be informed by biology, but it doesn't have to be determined by it in any sort of normative way. It's just a piece of information.
Yeah, I mean, that's so. If you, even taking the trans part out of it, I mean, it's like women, cis women, do have a drive to typically have a drive to become pregnant. That doesn't mean that all women become pregnant.
Oh yeah, I mean there are straight women as well who choose to not have children, and they have like shared their they share their experiences. Like, what, you don't want to have kids? And again, it's so abnormal to people. It's just like,
that's the reaction I had to my friend that I mentioned earlier, who wanted to have, well, she wants to have children, but she doesn't want to have it the normal way. And we also do the science workaround that we have now, which is the American science, which is good for that. But a couple things I want to say. Does everyone remember back in 2012 there was the legitimate? He's called the legitimate rape guy. He was like running for office for Senate. Todd Aiken, there you go.
Missouri.
I can't remember his last name, but Todd, yeah. So he's talking about ducks, right? How they have like supposedly there's like a natural mechanism for them to block when a male or tries to rape them, and he's trying to say, well, we should play as the humans too. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Humans don't have that, right?
No, I don't get that leap either.
Yeah, because there's no part of the human body that's able to block, rape for women anyway. But then the other thing I want to say is another thing that I noticed as a cis man that people kind of freak out about or they don't understand. It's when women are what you might call like the sexual aggressor in terms of like coming on to a man.
Yeah,
people have a problem with that still. I find I remember the few times it's happened to me in my life so far. I didn't have a problem with it, but like my friends seem like, oh wow, she's like acting like a dude or whatever. She's like pursuing you. I'm like, I kind of just laugh at them. I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of going against the grain of our society. But now I was like, oh yeah, it's just because they're socialized not to be able. Men are socialized for women not to expect that, and women are socialized not to do it. Men are supposed to come to you, kind of thing. So I feel like that's starting to change slowly. That it's more socially acceptable for women to pursue men, and it's not considered to be like an oddity in society anymore.
Right. There's a double standard for the longest time that unfortunately I think is changing, where it's like if a man is promiscuous, he is a stud. But if a woman is promiscuous, she is a slut. Hopefully that is changing in the recent times and stuff like that. Yeah. But that's kind of goes against normal narrative and stuff like that. But that's a double standard for the gender.
That's part of it. I guess like that's the more extreme part of it. I guess I'm talking about more like the benign, like people's overreaction to women just being sexual in general, anyways. Not just seeing a lot of men just trying to get a boyfriend and approaching a man. Just from that angle.
It's women exercising sexual autonomy. And this is why, Republicans want to make women have to ask their employers for permission to get contraception and to make abortion impossible to get. And it's why they would consider sort of, the women pursuing men as a breakdown, right? Because then it's not about the men getting to choose which women they have and being sure that the babies are born are theirs, right? That sort of patriarchal structure of controlling women's sexuality as a means to produce heirs. And also as property, sort of jealously guarded property, and upending that, giving women a place in society to make sexual choices. I think some men could find very threatening, because it could make them worry they're not going to be hit on by a woman, and then that becomes a status symbol in a toxic masculine sort of way.
This may be slightly off topic, but I'm single, so I. Using a dating app, but the one I really like is the one where the woman has to initiate the conversation.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah, Bumblebee or something like that. Yeah,
it's Bumble. Yeah, that one's the one where I've met people I've actually been interested in.
Interesting concept. I won't be trying that because I don't need to anymore. But I'll recommend to my friends who can't seem to get a woman otherwise. So maybe better luck with that than social dating sites that they tried in the past.
And of course, it also sort of depends on what you want, right? So if you're looking for a Tinder app, then you should go to Tinder. You have a better chance there. But if and men do want to have meaningful relationships with members of the opposite sex from time to time, and share their lives with them. So for guys who are looking for a more serious potential, or really good friends, then I think that app would be good, because women are going to be picking you not because for a hookup or their butt, but because you said something that intrigued them or interested them and drawn them in, which means the door is open. So just don't trip on your way in. You've got a chance here, and that could actually like I said, it could actually see producing much more meaningful interactions.
Well, in general, I prefer women who would do that, would initiate the conversation. So it's like designed for me, but it just goes back to what you were saying about women being the not aggressor, but
initiator.
To relationships and such. Or I prefer that in general. I mean, the first Mrs. Abby was like that. So she pursued me. I didn't.
And it's probably also good for guys who are a bit more introverted and shy, you know, and also you are spared having to come up with some sort of opening hit-up line. You know, something that is just going to go, no, swipe to the left. You know?
Yeah, I can definitely speak from my experience. I'm not as forward enough as I should be or could be and stuff like that. I make excuses for myself and stuff like that. But yeah, that happens. No, like women have hit on me now that I remember it, actually. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, and I just want to say, when I was using the term aggressor, I didn't mean it like kind of like in the I'm trying to rape you sense. But
no. I think we all
that's-
understood. You meant like
I think
in
like
terms
like
of
the literature, like that's what they use for when women try to, or anybody pursues anybody, and like or in anthropological sense, I guess. But yeah. So sorry about
Fuck.
well, guys, we've been going for almost over 2.5 hours, and we still have 27 people watching, if you can believe that.
More
I don't
people
know if
joining.
Hello, people.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else
taking
before
shifts,
we wrap
right?
this up. Yeah. I have to stay the whole time though because I've got the hang up link
Right.
button. But before we move on to this topic, I wanted to see if anyone else had any other comments. I think mostly, yeah, we kind of like moved into social practices and stuff. But I think, is everyone feeling like we've had a good bit of a chat? I might get on with my night then.
Yeah. There's more topics I can bring up, but then that would like start another half-hour discussion. So I just like I'm good with the conversation we had. So yeah, I'm satisfied. I'm spent.
All right. Yeah, it's like last call.
I think this was a productive year from a social progress standpoint because all of like the Me Too and like there's like a wave that's coming that's kind of starting to pick up steam where sexual assault and all just sexual harassment will not be tolerated anymore because the powerful are falling now. It's Hollywood's taboo is breaking down, so it's like it's gathering speed, and so I think the year is ending on a good note. It didn't start with a good note because with Trump, right, we get inaugurated, but things are moving right, and he's getting investigated now with the Mulder investigation. I was going to fire the guy. Hopefully, he won't do that, but
yeah,
and get a real misogynist in there.
Yeah, that's a whole other show, though. Is that?
Yeah, I would say after the inauguration that going forward, probably in history, we're going to look back on this time as, at least for me, in my study of politics, I haven't seen, well, I actually wasn't really consciously aware of the fight for the Equal Rights Amendment, but in terms of feminist and feminist allies leading an agenda in the United States, I don't think there's been anything quite like what we're seeing with the sort of way that women are running for office. We had a trans woman elected in the States. A lot of women in color came into executive positions, the Me Too movement, and all of this it's not an organized sort of like, by the National Organization of Women or anything. It's more of a grassroots wave, and we're seeing it at the polls, we're seeing it in the candidates, and we're seeing it in the values that these women are expressing when they're running for office. And so you're right. I think that we're ending the year on a positive note, much more positive than I felt this time last year.
Well, I get tired of people saying that social media is this evil thing and horrible. This horrible negative thing for the world. I definitely think Trump is a symptom and not the cause of something. But I think that people are starting to realize that their actions have consequences, and I think that if there's any good you could take out of Trump being the president of the United States is that people are having this has to be addressed.
Yeah, in some ways, maybe it's better that it all kind of collapsed in a sort of supernova dwarf, of sort of sucking in basically a nexus, an apex of conservative grossness, and the wave that's coming up in reaction to it is going to be able to make some positive changes for the 21st century.
Well, that and people might, more men might go their own way.
Why do these big towels complain about feminism? No, if you like men go your way, fine, just go your way. Stop talking about women or feminism and stuff like that. Seriously, why do you spend all your time talking about women and feminism? Just go your way. No one's stopping you.
I know. I mean, I kind of could be. I'm MGTOW, but not by choice though. I mean, that's just the way. I was wired that way. But I actually have one friend who's the MGTOW, and he actually does that. He just goes his own way, and he doesn't talk much. It's just a lifestyle choice, which is perfectly fine. But when it turns into this ideology, that's when and then trying to get other men to follow in line. That's when it. That's when I find it distasteful.
Your friend probably couldn't do a whole channel talking about being MGTOW and not talking about feminism, because I think there's only so many topics. Like, hey, I'm a single person doing this, being single. And that would literally be like the entire channel if you didn't talk about feminism. You could talk about men's issues too. It would be a space to talk about men's issues and men's activism. But yeah, it wouldn't really kind of get the views that I think the MGTOW channels get.
It's just knows the fact that MGTOW that's not completely misogynistic. That's kind of comforting a little bit.
Yeah, because when you just, that's your lifestyle, but when you just do like your if you just make videos about a whole bunch of other stuff that has nothing to do with it, that's a bit more healthy.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up, and probably not do too long afterwards because we've been going for a while. But for the people who actually stuck around and the people in the chat, I'm sorry if we didn't get to more of your questions. I'll try to do more interactive patron live chat interactions in the coming year. How about that for a New Year's resolution? So all that's left to be said, you guys, so that I've been Kristi. My patrons are always awesome, and you've been awesome too for watching the Hangout. Goodbye from me, and goodbye from the rest of the people in the Hangout. Say bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.